Racism often hides in plain sight, but in a quiet town, that silence shattered on a lonely country road. What began as a gang's attempt to intimidate Maya Ellis ended with her tied to a tree, left to die, as a warning. One call later, everything changed. None of the Red Creek Reapers who circled her could have known that the woman they tried to break was bound to a man forged in war. Caleb Ellis, a Delta Force veteran, carried more than combat scars. He carried resolve, proof, and a community ready to rise. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The afternoon sun filtered through the windshield as Maya Ellis drove home from her shift at the VA hospital. Her mind wandered to the elderly veteran she'd helped comfort during his final moments that morning. Even after years of hospice nursing, these moments still touched her deeply. The two-lane country road stretched ahead, bordered by dense woods on both sides. Through the shimmer of heat rising from the asphalt, she spotted a pickup truck pulled over, its hood propped open. Steam billowed from the engine compartment. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel as she slowed down. As a nurse, helping others was second nature to her. Could be someone's grandfather out here in this heat, she murmured to herself, checking her rearview mirror before pulling onto the gravel shoulder about 20 feet behind the truck. Maya grabbed her phone from her purse and slipped it into her scrub pocket. The crunch of gravel under her sensible white nursing shoes seemed too loud in the quiet afternoon. "Hello?" she called out, keeping her distance. "Do you need any help?" No answer came from the front of the truck. Maya took a few more cautious steps forward, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. Something felt wrong. The steam she'd seen wasn't steam at all. It was dust settling from the truck's arrival. Before she could retreat, 3 men in leather vests emerged from behind the truck. The patches on their backs displayed the skull logo of the Red Creek Reapers. Maya's heart jumped into her throat as 2 more appeared from the tree line behind her. "Well, well," one of them sneered, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Look who stopped to help." He spat on the ground near her feet. Maya backed away, her hands raised. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just going to leave." "You people always think you can just come and go as you please," another one growled, stepping closer. The hatred in his eyes made her stomach turn. A car approached, slowing as it passed. Maya caught the driver's eye, silently pleading for help. The woman behind the wheel quickly looked away and accelerated past them. "Nobody's going to help you here," the first man said, closing the distance. The others circled around her, cutting off any escape route. Rough hands grabbed her arms. Maya struggled, but they were too strong. "Let me go," she shouted, hoping another car would pass. One of them punched her in the stomach, driving the air from her lungs. They dragged her toward the woods, her feet scraping against rocks and fallen branches. The trees closed around them, filtering the sunlight into dappled shadows. Maya fought to breathe through the pain as they pushed her forward. "This'll teach you to know your place," one of them snarled, shoving her against a massive sycamore tree. The pale bark scraped against her cheek as they pulled her arms behind her. Coarse rope bit into her wrists as they bound her to the tree. The rough fibers dug into her skin as they wrapped it around her torso, securing her so tightly she could barely expand her chest to breathe. "Please," Maya gasped, trying to maintain her dignity despite her terror. "I'm a nurse. I help people. I've probably cared for some of your family members." One of them slapped her hard across the face. "Shut your mouth!" Through tear-blurred vision, Maya saw another car slow down on the road, then speed away. They took turns hitting her, careful to avoid her face. They wanted her to suffer, not show obvious signs of their attack. Maya bit her lip to keep from crying out, tasting blood. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of hearing her scream. Between blows, Maya focused on the medical alert ring on her right hand. a gift from Caleb that she'd initially thought was overprotective. Now it was her only hope. She pressed her thumb against the hidden button, praying it would work through the tree cover. "This is what happens when you forget your place," one of them taunted, grabbing her chin roughly. "Maybe a few days out here will remind you." Maya stared back at him, refusing to look away despite her fear. She could feel blood trickling down her wrists, where the rope had rubbed them raw. The afternoon sun filtering through the leaves seemed to mock the brutality happening beneath it. "Let's go," their leader ordered. "Let her think about her mistakes for a while." He leaned in close to Maya's face. "Nobody's going to look for you out here. And if they do—" He left the threat hanging in the air. Maya listened to their laughter fade as they walked away, the sound of motorcycles starting up in the distance. She tested the ropes, but they were tied expertly tight. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain through her battered body. Alone in the woods, Maya forced herself to stay calm, to control her breathing, despite the ropes constricting her chest. She thought of Caleb, praying her signal had gotten through. The sunlight continued its slow dance through the leaves above, marking the passage of time as she waited, hurting and hoping. The cicadas droned in the afternoon heat as Maya whispered prayers through cracked lips. Her throat was dry, and every breath pulled against the ropes, crushing her chest. Sweat mixed with blood trickled down her back, making the rough bark of the sycamore tree stick to her scrubs. "Our Father, who art in heaven." She focused on each word, using them to stay conscious. The sunlight pierced through gaps in the leaves above, creating shifting patterns that made her dizzy. Her shoulders screamed from being wrenched behind the tree for so long. 20 miles away, Caleb Ellis was methodically cleaning his gear at the kitchen table when his phone buzzed with an alert. His hands froze over the disassembled pieces as he saw the emergency signal from Maya's ring. The GPS coordinates flashed on his screen, showing a location deep in the logging roads. Without hesitation, he grabbed his go-bag and medical kit. The screen door slammed behind him as he sprinted to his truck. The engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as he accelerated onto the main road. His mind ran through scenarios, but his breathing remained steady, controlled. Years of Delta Force training had taught him to channel fear into focus. He found the turnoff to the logging road easily enough. Recent tire tracks marked the dirt, motorcycle treads, and a pickup. Caleb's eyes narrowed as he noted their depth and pattern. Multiple bikes had come through, probably 5 or 6, plus a truck used as a blocker. The truck sat empty by the roadside, hood still up. Caleb parked behind it, quickly checking the engine compartment. Cold. This had been a trap, set up long before Maya drove past. His jaw clenched as he spotted drops of blood on the gravel. Following the drag marks into the woods, Caleb moved silently, despite his size. Each step was precise, avoiding twigs and loose stones. The thickness of the forest couldn't hide the signs: broken branches, disturbed leaves, more blood drops leading deeper in. He heard Maya before he saw her. The quiet sound of prayer carried through the trees. Caleb's hands tightened into fists as he emerged into the clearing. Maya hung limply against the massive sycamore, her dark skin mottled with bruises where they showed through her torn scrubs. "Maya," he whispered, approaching carefully to avoid startling her. Her eyes fluttered open. "Caleb?" Her voice was barely audible, rough from thirst. He pulled out his tactical knife and began sawing through the ropes. "I'm here, baby. I've got you." His touch was gentle despite the rage building in his chest at seeing her injuries up close. The sound of motorcycles approaching made him freeze. Maya's eyes widened in fear. "They're coming back," she breathed. "Stay still," Caleb murmured, working faster on the ropes. As the last strands fell away, Maya slumped forward into his arms. He helped her sit against the tree, hidden by its massive trunk. 3 bikers emerged into the clearing, laughing and passing a bottle between them. They stopped short when they saw the cut ropes hanging loose. "What the hell?" one of them started to say. Caleb was already moving. He scooped up a length of the discarded rope and swung it low, catching the nearest biker across the shins. As the man pitched forward, Caleb drove his knee up into the falling face. Teeth cracked against bone. The second biker swung a heavy chain. Caleb stepped inside the arc, trapped the man's arm, and used his own momentum to slam him headfirst into the sycamore trunk. The impact echoed through the clearing. The biker dropped, unconscious before he hit the ground. The third man managed to pull a knife, but his stance was sloppy. Amateur. Caleb knocked the blade aside with his forearm and delivered 3 precise strikes: throat, solar plexus, knee. As the biker wheezed and stumbled, Caleb spun him around and zip-tied his hands behind his back. The entire fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. None of the bikers had landed a single hit. Caleb quickly secured the other 2 with zip ties, then returned to Maya. She was trying to stand, using the tree for support. Her legs trembled with the effort. "Easy," he said softly, supporting her weight. He pulled out his medical kit and began checking her injuries. The bruises were bad, but nothing appeared broken. He gave her small sips of water while examining the rope burns on her wrists. Something metallic glinted on one of the unconscious biker's hands. Caleb knelt down for a closer look. His expression hardened as he recognized the distinctive shield design of a sheriff's auxiliary ring. He removed it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Maya saw his face change. "What is it?" "Evidence," he replied grimly, helping her stand again. "This wasn't random, Maya. These men had official backing." He looked at the beaten bikers, then back at his wife. "Someone wanted to send you a message." Maya leaned against Caleb as the afternoon light began to soften. Her legs were steadier now, but every movement sent waves of pain through her bruised body. Caleb kept one arm around her waist while scanning the tree line, his posture alert and protective. "We need to document everything before we leave," he said quietly, pulling out his phone. "These injuries, the ropes, the scene." The crunch of tires on gravel made them both tense. A weathered brown sedan rolled to a stop near the clearing's edge. Deacon Elijah Hart stepped out, his lined face tight with concern. The elderly church elder moved carefully but purposefully toward them, his worn Bible clutched in one hand. "Sister Maya," he called softly, "I saw what happened on the road. I followed at a distance when they—" His voice caught. "When they dragged you in here." Maya tried to smile, but her split lip made it more of a grimace. "Deacon Hart, you shouldn't have put yourself at risk." The old man shook his head, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I did more than follow. I recorded everything on my dash cam." He pulled out a small SD card. "The whole ambush, their faces, their bikes, the truck setup. It's all here." Caleb started to reach for the card, but Elijah pulled back slightly. "Wait. You need to understand something first. Calling the sheriff in this county—" He glanced at the bound bikers. "It won't help. Wade Baylor's been bought and paid for 20 years running." "We figured that out," Caleb said grimly, touching the auxiliary ring in his pocket. "But we need official documentation of Maya's injuries." The distant wail of sirens cut him off. Multiple vehicles, approaching fast, too fast for a random response to an isolated location. "Someone tipped them off," Elijah said, quickly pressing the SD card into Caleb's hand. They were waiting for this. 3 patrol cars burst into view, sliding to dramatic stops that kicked up clouds of dust. Deputies poured out with weapons drawn, taking up tactical positions that seemed rehearsed rather than reactive. "Hands where we can see them!" one deputy shouted, though Caleb already had his raised, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Officers," Maya started. I'm the victim here. These men attacked me. Ma'am, step back and calm down. Another deputy cut her off, not even looking at her obvious injuries. Before you end up in cuffs, too. Two deputies approached the bound bikers, but instead of securing them, they began cutting the zip ties. The gang members stood up slowly, stretching and grinning despite their injuries. Mr. Ellis, the lead deputy said, emphasizing the civilian title mockingly, you're under arrest for aggravated assault and brandishing weapons in commission of a violent crime. What? Maya stepped forward despite her pain. He was protecting me. Look at what they did. She gestured to her torn clothes, the rope burns, the bruises darkening on her skin. The deputy finally glanced at her, his expression bored. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down before you're next. We've got multiple witnesses saying your husband here attacked these gentlemen unprovoked. Witnesses? Elijah spoke up. I saw everything. I have video. And we'll need to confiscate that dash cam as evidence, the deputy interrupted smoothly. Two officers were already moving toward the deacon's car. Department policy. They handcuffed Caleb roughly, though he offered no resistance. His face remained composed, but his eyes met Maya's with an intensity that carried volumes of unspoken meaning. As they led him toward the patrol car, he called back, Maya, my bag. Got it, she answered, clutching his duffel close. She knew what it contained. Evidence, weapons, things that couldn't fall into these deputies' hands. The bikers were laughing now, making a show of dusting themselves off. One winked at Maya as he passed, touching the empty spot on his finger where the auxiliary ring had been. She stood straighter despite her injuries, refusing to show fear. This isn't over, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the clearing. The lead deputy paused with his hand on Caleb's head, about to push him into the back seat. For your sake, ma'am, it better be. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Hate to see anything else happen to such a respected member of the community. They slammed the car door on Caleb. Maya watched helplessly as the patrol cars pulled away, their taillights disappearing into the gathering dusk. The bikers mounted their motorcycles and roared off in the opposite direction, their laughter echoing through the trees. Deacon Hart placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. Come on, daughter. Let's get you somewhere safe. This isn't the end. It's just the first battle. Maya nodded, still clutching Caleb's bag. She could feel the sheriff's auxiliary ring in her pocket, where Caleb had slipped it to her during their embrace. Evidence, proof, the beginning of justice, not the end of it. Maya jerked awake on her living room couch, every muscle screaming in protest. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in its beam. She'd refused the hospital last night, letting Deacon Hart's wife clean and bandage her wounds instead. The TV droned quietly in the background, left on from the night before. In local news, authorities are investigating a roadside incident involving a dangerous former military operative. The news anchor's voice made Maya sit up straight, despite her pain. On screen, they showed Caleb's service photo next to footage of police cars at the scene. The suspect, described as unstable by witnesses, allegedly attacked several local residents. Maya's hand trembled as she grabbed the remote, turning up the volume. The report continued, painting Caleb as an unhinged veteran while completely ignoring her injuries. They didn't even mention her name. Sources close to the sheriff's department suggest this may be part of a pattern of aggressive behavior. She clicked it off, her jaw clenched. Carefully, she made her way to the bathroom mirror. Purple bruises bloomed across her cheekbone. Rope burns circled her wrists, raw and red. She lifted her shirt. More bruises mapped the gang's brutality across her ribs and back. Maya picked up her phone and began documenting everything. Every mark, every scrape, every bruise. The morning light was perfect for capturing the truth they wanted to bury. 2 hours later, she walked up the courthouse steps beside Deacon Hart. Her business suit covered most of the damage, but she'd deliberately left her facial bruises visible. Let them see what they'd done. The arraignment courtroom was already half full. Maya recognized several church members who'd come to support them, but also noticed the sidelong glances and whispered conversations from others. News traveled fast in Red Creek. Sheriff Wade Baylor stood near the front, holding court with a cluster of local business owners. His belly laugh carried across the room as he clapped someone's shoulder. When he spotted Maya, his smile widened. "Mrs. Ellis," he called out, tipping his hat. "Terrible business. Just terrible. Rest assured we're getting to the bottom of this unfortunate situation." Before Maya could respond, the side door opened. 2 deputies led Caleb in, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He walked with military bearing despite the handcuffs, scanning the room until he found Maya. The relief in his eyes when he saw her standing tall made her throat tight. Baylor stepped closer to Caleb, speaking just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You know, soldier, I've seen your type before. Think your training makes you untouchable." He adjusted his badge with practiced casualness. "But soldiers don't win wars against sheriffs. Not in their own county." Caleb said nothing, but Maya saw the muscle tick in his jaw. A tall man in a state trooper uniform watched the exchange with narrowed eyes from the back of the room. The arraignment proceeded quickly. The charges were read: assault, weapons violations, disturbing the peace. No mention of Maya's attack. The public defender assigned to Caleb looked bored as he entered the not guilty plea. "Your Honor," a new voice called from the gallery. The state trooper Maya had noticed earlier stepped forward. "Sergeant Tommy Neal, State Police. I'd like to verify the defendant's service record and offer to stand bond." The judge peered over his glasses. "Rather unusual, Sergeant." "Yes, sir. But as a fellow serviceman, I feel obligated to ensure proper procedure is followed." Neal's emphasis on proper procedure made Baylor's smile flicker slightly. While the paperwork was being processed, a woman with a reporter's notebook slid into the seat beside Maya. "Anya Ruiz, investigative journalist," she whispered. "Those bruises tell a different story than what's in the police report. Want to talk?" Maya studied her carefully. "You're not from the local paper." "Regional Bureau. I specialize in stories people want buried." Anya's dark eyes were sharp and assured. "And something here stinks all the way to the state capitol." Before Maya could respond, the judge granted bond. She watched as Neal signed the papers and Caleb's cuffs were removed. The relief was short-lived. Outside on the courthouse steps, Baylor intercepted them. He stood too close to Maya, his folksy charm carrying an edge of menace. "Best you and your husband drive on out of Red Creek," he said softly, tipping his hat again. "Hate to see anything else unfortunate happen to such fine folks." Maya met his gaze steadily, refusing to step back despite the way her bruises throbbed in memory. She said nothing, but her silence carried all the defiance she couldn't yet voice. Baylor's smile tightened almost imperceptibly before he turned and walked away, boots clicking on the marble steps. Around them, the morning crowd flowed past, some averting their eyes, others staring openly. Maya felt the weight of their judgment, their fear, their willingness to accept the official story. But she also felt Anya Ruiz watching intently from the sidelines, Sergeant Neal's thoughtful gaze, and Deacon Hart's quiet strength beside her. The auxiliary ring in her pocket pressed against her leg like a promise. Evidence. Witnesses. Truth waiting to be told. Evening shadows stretched across Maya's dining room table as she pushed her barely touched plate aside. The events of the day had stolen her appetite, but not her resolve. Caleb sat beside her, his presence solid and reassuring, while Deacon Elijah occupied the chair across from them, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "Sheriff wants us to run," Maya said, breaking the heavy silence. But I won't give them that satisfaction. This is our home. Caleb reached over, his fingers gentle on her bandaged wrist. We'll need a plan. They're organized, connected. This goes deeper than a few racist bikers. A knock at the door made them all tense. Maya peered through the peephole to see Anya Ruiz standing on the porch, notebook in hand. After a quick glance at Caleb, who nodded, she opened the door. "Thanks for letting me come by," Anya said, stepping inside. Her eyes took in the scene quickly. The half-eaten dinner, the gathering of allies. "I've been digging since the courthouse. You're not the first family they've targeted." They cleared space at the table. Anya pulled out her laptop, creating an audio recording as Maya and Elijah described everything in detail. The ambush, the tree, the convenient arrival of deputies, the missing dash-cam footage. "Show her the ring," Maya prompted. Caleb placed the auxiliary sheriff's ring on the table. It caught the light, the official emblem unmistakable. "Well, well," Anya murmured, photographing it from several angles. "Official auxiliary program hardware. These are only issued to approved volunteers." She looked up sharply. "Who just happened to be Reapers?" "That's not all," Elijah added, pulling out a folder of church records. "Over the past 18 months, 6 families from my congregation have moved away after similar intimidation. All black families, all homeowners." Anya's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Addresses?" As Elijah listed them, her eyebrows rose. She turned her laptop around, showing a map of Red Creek County with property records highlighted. Every single one of those properties was purchased within weeks by shell companies. All trace back to Klein Development. She tapped the screen. Richard Klein's building an industrial corridor through Red Creek. These random attacks? They're land grabs. "The Sheriff's Department provides muscle through their auxiliary program," Caleb said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Klein's company gets the properties cheap after families flee. Everyone wins, except the people being driven out." Maya stood up suddenly, pacing the kitchen. "We need to warn people, protect them." "Already started," Elijah said. "Called Sister Margaret and the church mothers after court. They're organizing a presence at the next county commission meeting. Nothing makes politicians sweat like church ladies with questions." Caleb nodded slowly. "I can help with immediate security. Teach people what to watch for, how to stay safe. Basic situational awareness, communication networks. Like a neighborhood watch?" Anya asked. "More comprehensive. Emergency protocols, buddy systems, documentation procedures. No weapons training. We keep this strictly defensive and legal." Maya returned to the table, her face set with determination. "I'll coordinate with the VA nurses. Many of our patients have family in affected neighborhoods. We can spread the word quietly. I'll start background research on Klein Development," Anya said, making notes. "Follow the money, track the property transfers. If they're using intimidation to drive down prices, there will be patterns." They worked late into the evening, mapping out strategies. Elijah called church members, setting up meeting times for Caleb's training sessions. Anya built a timeline of incidents, property sales, and sheriff department connections. Maya listed names of families who might be at risk, marking their locations on the map. Around midnight, everyone finally headed home. Caleb walked Elijah to his car, while Maya cleaned up the kitchen. Her phone sat on the counter, open to the photos she'd taken of her injuries. She scrolled past them to find the picture she'd taken of the sycamore tree that afternoon, standing tall and indifferent in the summer light, its bark still bearing traces of the rope that had bound her. Maya picked up the phone, studying the image. The tree had been meant to be a symbol of her helplessness, her fear. Instead, it would become something else entirely. Evidence. A rallying point. The physical proof of their cruelty and corruption. "They thought this tree would be my grave," she whispered, touching the screen gently. It'll be their undoing. Her fingers hovered over the image, tracing the pattern of shadows and light across the ancient bark. Each groove and knot seemed to tell a story now, not just of her pain, but of resistance, of survival, of justice demanding to be served. The sycamore stood as a witness, its branches reaching toward a sky that had watched everything unfold beneath them. Through the window, Maya could see fireflies beginning their nightly dance in her backyard. The summer evening hummed with cicadas and distant traffic, ordinary sounds that felt precious after everything. She heard Caleb's footsteps returning up the porch steps, solid and reassuring. The lunch crowd had thinned at Lou's diner, leaving only a few regulars nursing coffee at the counter. Maya sat in the farthest booth, her back to the wall, watching the door. Her tea had gone cold, untouched. The bell above the door chimed. A woman in her early 40s entered, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. She scanned the diner quickly before making her way to Maya's booth. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid into the seat. "Dr. Ellis?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm Nadia Klein." Maya studied Richard Klein's daughter. Expensive clothes couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders or the way she kept glancing toward the windows. This wasn't someone enjoying her father's wealth and power. This was someone carrying a heavy burden. "Thank you for meeting me," Maya said quietly. "Anya Ruiz said you had information." Nadia removed her sunglasses, revealing tired eyes rimmed with worry. "I've spent years trying to ignore what my father does, telling myself it was just business." She pulled a thick manila envelope from her bag. "I can't anymore. Not after what happened to you." The waitress approached, but Nadia waved her away. Her hands shook more as she opened the envelope. "I work in his accounting office," she continued, spreading papers across the table. "These are copies of internal ledgers. Look at the dates and amounts." Maya leaned forward, examining the documents. Column after column of numbers, dates, property addresses. Her own neighborhood appeared multiple times. "Shell companies," Nadia explained, pointing to highlighted entries. "My father creates them to hide the money flow. This one, Red Creek Holdings, LLC. It pays monthly stipends to members of the Reapers who qualify for the Sheriff's Auxiliary Program." Maya's finger traced a row of payments. $10,000 monthly to security contractors. That's just the start. Nadia flipped to another page. Campaign contributions to Sheriff Baylor through various PACs. All technically legal, but the timing. She tapped several entries. These donations spike right before major property acquisitions. The pattern was clear in the numbers. Harassment incidents reported by black families, followed by desperate property sales at low prices, followed by generous payments to both the sheriff's office and the auxiliary program. "Here's your street," Nadia said softly. "They've been planning this push for months. The Reapers weren't random thugs. They were doing their job." Maya felt her chest tighten as she read the clinical notation beside her address. "Target property. Phase 2 acquisition timeline. Status. In progress." "Why are you showing me this?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Nadia's eyes welled with tears. "Because I've watched him destroy communities my whole life. He calls it urban renewal or economic development. But it's just theft. Legal theft backed by terror." She wiped her eyes quickly. "I used to tell myself I wasn't responsible because I never directly hurt anyone. But my silence, my complicity. You're breaking that silence now," Maya said gently. "Take them." Nadia pushed the papers toward Maya. "These are copies. Dates, amounts, shell company names, everything. There's a USB drive in there too, with scanned documents going back 3 years." She stood abruptly. "I should go, if anyone saw us." Maya gathered the papers carefully. "Thank you. This couldn't have been easy." "It's not enough," Nadia said, putting her sunglasses back on. "It won't undo what they did to you, or to all the other families. But maybe it can stop them from hurting anyone else." She hurried out of the diner, the bell chiming her departure. Maya sat for a moment, feeling the weight of the envelope in her hands. Physical proof of the corruption they'd suspected. Evidence that could bring down not just the Reapers, but the whole system that enabled them. Outside, Caleb waited in their truck, parked where he could watch both the diner's entrances. Maya slid into the passenger seat, clutching the envelope. "She came through," Maya said, showing him the contents. Ledgers, bank records, everything connecting Klein to the Reapers and Baylor. Caleb examined a page, his jaw tightening as he read. Systematic. Professional. They've turned terrorism into a business expense. "We've got proof," Maya said, her voice firm. "Now we just need to survive showing it." The documents felt hot in her hands, like they could burst into flame at any moment. Each page represented another crack in the foundation of Klein's empire, another piece of evidence that could finally expose the truth. Maya thought of all the families who had fled in fear, their homes stolen through intimidation and corruption. The papers in her lap were their voices, their stories reduced to cold numbers in a ledger. The midday sun beat down on the truck's hood as Caleb pulled away from the diner. Maya watched Nadia's figure disappear around a corner, wondering what it had cost the woman to betray her father. Sometimes courage came in unexpected forms, not just in fighting back, but in simply refusing to remain silent any longer. The church bells of Red Creek First Baptist rang 3 times, their deep tones echoing across the town square. Maya stood at the base of the sycamore tree, her bruises now yellowing but still visible. A crowd had gathered, faces both familiar and new, phones raised to record. "This tree," Maya began, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "They chose it, thinking it would be my grave. But they don't know our history. They don't know that trees like this one have watched over our people for generations. They've seen our pain, but they've also seen our triumph." Anya Ruiz moved through the crowd with her camera, capturing both Maya's words and the faces of those listening. Some nodded in quiet agreement. Others wiped away tears. "Look at these rope marks," Maya continued, touching the trunk where bark had been scraped away. They thought they were writing a story of fear. Instead, they wrote their own ending. "Because we are done being silent. We are done pretending this is just the way things are." In the church hall behind her, the rhythmic sound of practice drills punctuated her words. Through the windows, Caleb could be seen leading a group of local veterans and seniors through defensive stances. His voice carried faintly, "Remember, awareness is your first defense. You walk together, you watch for each other." Maya held up one of the new yard signs that had begun appearing across town. "We see you." They operate in shadows, thinking darkness will protect them. But we see them. We see the false badges they hide behind. We see the money that flows from suffering. And now, she smiled grimly, the state attorney general sees them too. A ripple went through the crowd. Just that morning, news had broken about the AG's subpoenas into the auxiliary program. Sheriff Baylor's carefully constructed system was beginning to crack. On the courthouse steps across the square, Deacon Elijah sat with a group of church mothers, their phones ready to record any suspicious activity. They had been there every day this week, a quiet but unmistakable presence. Their message was clear. Nothing would happen in secret anymore. "Some of you are afraid," Maya acknowledged, looking at familiar faces in the crowd. "I understand that fear. I felt it when they tied me here. But look around you now. Look at how many of us there are. Look at how we stand together." More people were arriving, parking their cars and joining the gathering. Maya saw Mrs. Johnson, who'd lost her family home last year, Mr. Washington, whose business had been vandalized repeatedly until he sold. Each face carried a story of loss, but now they carried something else, too: determination. They chose this tree. Maya's voice grew stronger, thinking it would break us. Instead, it's become our gathering place, our symbol, our promise that what happened here will never happen again. Anya's camera panned across the crowd, capturing the mix of ages and races. This wasn't just Maya's story anymore. It had become the story of a community finding its voice. Inside the church hall, Caleb worked with an elderly woman, showing her how to break a hold. "It's not about strength," he explained patiently. "It's about leverage and confidence. Knowing you can defend yourself changes how you carry yourself." The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the gathering. More signs appeared in the crowd. "We see you. We stand together. No more silence." As the formal gathering dispersed, small groups lingered, talking in low voices, sharing stories they'd kept quiet for too long. Maya watched as neighbors exchanged numbers, made plans, organized watch schedules. The fear that had isolated them was being replaced by something stronger: solidarity. The sun was setting when Maya finally sat down on the church steps beside Caleb. He handed her a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Simple ham and cheese, but she was suddenly starving. They ate in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of light paint the sky in deep oranges and purples. Church mothers were still stationed at the courthouse, taking turns with thermoses of coffee and fold-out chairs. A few veterans practiced their defensive moves on the lawn. Anya sat in her car, typing furiously on her laptop, preparing her latest story. Maya took another bite of her sandwich, feeling the evening breeze cool against her skin. The sycamore's leaves rustled softly in the distance. She turned to Caleb, a small smile playing at her lips. "For the first time," she said quietly, "I feel them shaking." The digital clock on Maya's nightstand blinked, 11:42 p.m. She lay in bed beside Caleb, both still dressed, too wired to properly sleep after the day's events. The ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, its soft whirring mixing with the chorus of crickets outside. "You did good today," Caleb said, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "The way you spoke at that tree. You gave people courage." Maya squeezed his hand, remembering the faces in the crowd. They've always had courage. They just needed to see they weren't alone. The sharp ring of Maya's phone shattered the quiet. The caller ID showed Sister Jenkins, one of the church mothers. "Maya!" The woman's voice was frantic. "The church! They've set fire to the church!" Maya bolted upright. "We're coming! Call 911!" They rushed to their truck, tires squealing as Caleb accelerated down their street. 2 blocks away, an orange glow already lit up the night sky. The acrid smell of smoke filled their nostrils as they approached First Baptist. The church hall, where just hours ago they'd been training and organizing, was engulfed in flames. Windows had been shattered, and thick black smoke poured out. A small crowd of neighbors gathered, many in pajamas and robes, watching in horror. "Deacon Elijah was inside," someone shouted. "He was working late on tomorrow's sermon." Caleb sprinted toward the building, Maya close behind. They found a side door, smoke billowing out. Through the haze, they heard coughing. "Elijah!" Caleb called out, pulling his shirt over his nose. "Follow my voice." A figure stumbled through the smoke. Deacon Elijah, doubled over and wheezing. Caleb and Maya caught him as he emerged, helping him away from the burning building. His face was smudged with soot, his white hair singed at the edges. Sirens wailed in the distance as fire trucks approached. Mrs. Washington, who lived across from the church, rushed over, wringing her hands. "I saw them!" she cried. 3 motorcycles just before the explosion. They threw something through the windows and roared off. Anya Ruiz appeared with her camera, documenting everything. She moved carefully around the periphery of the fire, her lens catching details others might miss. Near a broken window, she photographed melted plastic jugs, the remnants of accelerant used to start the blaze. The fire department arrived, hoses deployed quickly. Water arced through the night air, steam rising where it met flames. An ambulance pulled up, paramedics rushing to check on Deacon Elijah. Sheriff Baylor's cruiser rolled up last, taking his time stepping out. He made a show of surveying the scene, shaking his head in mock concern. "Terrible business," he announced loudly to the gathered crowd. "Must be those outside agitators we've been warning about. All this protest activity was bound to attract troublemakers." Maya watched his performance, rage building in her chest. The same man who'd organized her attack now stood here, using this violence to further his lies. The paramedics had Elijah on a stretcher, fitting him with an oxygen mask. His eyes were red and watering, but he gripped Maya's hand as they passed. "The filing cabinet," he wheezed. "In my office. They knew." Maya's eyes widened slightly. The cabinet had held copies of testimonies from families who'd been forced out, documentation they'd been gathering. Now it was surely ash. Caleb examined the broken windows with a soldier's eye. The pattern of the break, the placement of the accelerant. This wasn't random vandalism. This was tactical, meant to destroy specific things and send a message. Anya sidled up to them, speaking in a low voice. "I got clear photos of the jugs. Same type sold at the hardware store where the Reapers fuel up. And the burn pattern suggests they knew exactly which rooms to target." More neighbors arrived, many holding up phones, recording everything. The sheriff's smirk faltered slightly at the sight of all those cameras. He couldn't control this narrative as easily anymore. The paramedics finished securing Elijah for transport. Maya's fingers were still clenched into fists, her nails cutting into her palms. The heat of the fire painted everyone's faces in flickering orange light, casting dancing shadows across the church lawn where they'd stood in hope just hours before. Sheriff Baylor strolled over to where Caleb stood, making sure no one else was within earshot. His folksy mask dropped for a moment, revealing the snake beneath. "Guess you should have left town when I said." The morning sun beat down on the courthouse steps as hundreds of people filled the square. Their signs bobbed like a sea of protest. "Justice for Red Creek. Stop the corruption. We see you." The crowd's energy crackled with determination despite the previous night's violence. Maya stood at the top of the steps beside Anya Ruiz, who was setting up her camera. Church mothers formed a protective circle around them, their Sunday best a sharp contrast to the deputies lurking at the edges of the crowd. Caleb positioned himself nearby, scanning faces with military precision. "They burned our church to silence us," Maya said, reviewing her notes. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "They don't know how loud truth can be." Sister Jenkins adjusted Maya's microphone, squeezing her shoulder. The crowd's chanting grew stronger. "Red Creek Justice! Red Creek Justice!" Deacon Elijah wasn't there, still in the hospital recovering from smoke inhalation. But his congregation had come out in force, mixing with veterans, families who'd been pushed out, and citizens fed up with corruption. Anya's camera light blinked red, ready to stream. Maya stepped forward, raising the microphone to speak. The crowd hushed, leaning in. But before she could utter a word, a wall of deputies emerged from the courthouse doors behind her. They moved with practiced coordination, clearly waiting for this moment. Sheriff Baylor appeared at their center, his badge gleaming. "Caleb Ellis!" Baylor's voice boomed through a bullhorn. "You're under arrest for domestic terrorism and arson." The crowd erupted in shocked protests. Maya spun around as deputies swarmed toward Caleb. He stood perfectly still, hands visible, knowing any movement could be twisted against him. "This is ridiculous!" Anya shouted, camera still rolling. "He was helping victims when the fire—" Two deputies grabbed her camera, yanking it away. Another deputy snatched phones from people filming in the crowd. Baylor raised the bullhorn again. "We have security footage showing Mr. Ellis purchasing accelerant yesterday afternoon. The same type used in last night's attack." "That's a lie!" Maya pushed forward, but church mothers held her back, knowing the danger. "Check the real footage. Check." "Ma'am, step back or face arrest for interfering with police business." A deputy's hand rested meaningfully on his taser. The deputies surrounded Caleb, roughly cuffing his hands behind his back. He didn't resist, but his eyes locked with Maya's, communicating volumes. "Stay strong. Stay smart. Don't give them an excuse." Baylor strutted forward, playing to the news cameras he hadn't confiscated. "Mr. Ellis has been identified as a domestic threat. His military background and recent erratic behavior make him a clear danger to this community." The crowd pressed closer, their anger building. Deputies formed a line, hands on their weapons. "This assembly is now unlawful. Disperse or face arrest for disorderly conduct." Maya watched helplessly as they dragged Caleb toward a waiting police van. His face remained calm, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. They'd planned for this possibility, but the reality still felt like a physical blow. "This isn't over!" Maya's voice rang out across the square. The crowd took up her words, turning them into a chant. "This isn't over! This isn't over!" But beneath the defiant chants, fear crept in. People remembered the burning church, the unanswered calls for help. They saw phones being confiscated, cameras going dark. The deputies' hands hadn't left their weapons. Mothers pulled children back. Veterans who'd stood proud moments ago now melted away, knowing they couldn't help Caleb by getting arrested themselves. The crowd's energy shifted from righteousness to survival. Baylor watched it happen with satisfaction, his concerned sheriff mask firmly in place. "Please, folks, return to your homes. Let law enforcement handle this dangerous situation." The police van's doors slammed shut with Caleb inside. Maya felt the crowd retreating around her, leaving her exposed on the steps. Sister Jenkins tugged at her arm, whispering urgently, "Live to fight another day, child." Deputies continued pushing people back, breaking up clusters of resistance. Anya argued furiously about her constitutional rights as they confiscated her backup phone. The chanting died out, replaced by murmurs and worried glances. Maya stood her ground until the last possible moment, watching the van pull away with her husband inside. Her voice was hoarse but steady as she called after it, "This isn't over!" But the fear had done its work. The mighty crowd of hundreds had dwindled to nervous dozens. People who'd shouted for justice now hurried to their cars, looking over their shoulders. The deputies' smirks said it all. They'd won this round. The courthouse square emptied slowly, leaves from the rally's trampled signs skittering across the pavement. Maya felt Sister Jenkins and other church mothers forming a protective circle around her again. But the victory they'd felt at dawn had evaporated in the late morning sun. Sheriff Baylor tipped his hat mockingly as he passed her. "Y'all have a blessed day now," he drawled, every word dripping with threat. The jail cell's fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, casting strange shadows through the bars. Caleb sat perfectly still on the thin mattress, his back straight against the cold wall. His military training had taught him how to endure confinement, how to stay alert while appearing passive. Down the corridor, boots scraped against concrete. Caleb recognized the deliberate heaviness of the footsteps. Someone wanting to be heard, wanting to intimidate. He kept his eyes half closed, face neutral. Brennan Brick Malloy's massive form appeared outside the cell. The biker gang leader wore a deputy's uniform that strained against his bulk, the sheriff's auxiliary badge pinned crookedly on his chest. He twirled a ring of keys with exaggerated casualness. Well, well, the big bad soldier, all caged up. Brick's voice echoed off the cement walls. Not so tough without your wife around to hide behind, huh? Caleb remained motionless, his breathing steady. He'd seen Brick's type before. Bullies who mistook silence for weakness, who needed to fill quiet spaces with their own voice. Sheriff says you might be in here a while. Brick leaned against the bars, making them rattle. Terrorism charges ain't no joke. Course, accident might happen before trial. Lots of dangerous folks in county lockup. A muscle twitched in Caleb's jaw, but he gave no other reaction. His stillness seemed to irritate Brick, who slapped the bars hard. Hey, I'm talking to you, soldier boy. I hear you, Caleb said softly, not moving. Brick spat on the floor. Yeah? Well, hear this. While you're sitting pretty in here, we're cleaning house. All them papers your nosy wife's been collecting? Those hard drives from the church? By morning, won't be nothing left but ashes at the bottom of Red Creek Quarry. Now Caleb's eyes opened fully, though he kept his head down. The quarry. He filed away every detail of Brick's boasting. Boss man Klein's real particular about this cleanup job, Brick continued, enjoying the sound of his own voice. Midnight sharp. We're moving everything. 30 minutes to the quarry, then straight down the deep end. Ain't nobody finding nothing after that. Another set of footsteps approached. Lighter, more professional. Brick straightened up, adjusting his ill-fitting uniform. That's right. Just sit there quiet, he sneered. Maybe if you're real good, we'll let you have dinner before lights out. Caleb watched through his lashes as Brick swaggered away, trying too hard to look official as a real deputy passed. The cell block returned to its humid silence, broken only by that endless fluorescent buzz. Across town, Maya sat in her car outside the same diner where she'd first met Nadia Klein. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The events at the courthouse still burned in her mind, but she forced herself to focus. They needed intelligence, needed to know what they were up against. Nadia slipped into the passenger seat, her designer purse incongruous in Maya's weathered Honda. Her face was drawn with worry. They're destroying everything tonight, Nadia said without preamble. Dad called an emergency board meeting. He's paranoid about the FBI getting involved. The quarry, Maya said. We know. Nadia's eyes widened. How did you? Doesn't matter. What time? Midnight. Dad's sending his personal security team to oversee it. He doesn't trust the bikers alone anymore. Nadia twisted her hands in her lap. I'm so sorry about your husband. About the church. I never thought my father would go this far. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Back lot of the VA, 10 minutes. Neil. We'll make it right, Maya told Nadia. But I need you ready to testify when the time comes. No backing down. Nadia nodded firmly. I've got copies of everything, hidden where they'll never look. The VA parking lot was nearly empty this late. Maya found Sergeant. Neil's unmarked car tucked between delivery vehicles. The state trooper looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. I've been reviewing the arrest records, he said, as Maya slid into the passenger seat. The timestamps don't match. Someone manually entered Caleb's booking time to create an alibi for the fire. Can you prove it? Better. I can use it. Neil handed her a folded paper. Emergency custody transfer order. Signed by a judge who owes me a favor. It won't hold long, but it'll get Caleb out tonight if we time it right. Maya studied the document, hope flickering. Why are you helping us? Neil was quiet for a moment. Because 20 years ago, I swore an oath to protect and serve. Not to help rich men steal land and hurt innocent people. He met her eyes. And because your husband's a soldier, who came home to find corruption wearing a badge. That's not the America he fought for. Back in his cell, Caleb counted steps between guard rotations, mapped angles and blind spots, recalled every detail of Brick's boasting, the quarry, midnight, everything in one place. He whispered it like a prayer. If they're moving it tonight, then tonight we end this. The jail's evening shift change brought the usual shuffle of boots and keys. In his cell, Caleb noticed something different. The rhythm was off. A new set of footsteps, measured and purposeful, approached his block. Sergeant Tommy Neal appeared, manila envelope tucked under his arm. His state trooper uniform stood out among the county browns, commanding attention without trying. "Ellis," Neal called out formally. "Got some paperwork here, needs reviewing." Two deputies lounging at their desks straightened up. The senior one, barrel-chested with a coffee-stained shirt, stepped forward. "County business ain't state business, Sergeant," he drawled, but Neal was already laying out documents. "These arrest logs," Neal traced his finger down a column, "says you booked Ellis at 11:42 p.m. on the night of the church fire. That right?" The deputy shrugged. "Records don't lie. Funny thing about digital systems." Neal pulled out a printed screenshot. "Server timestamps show these entries were backdated. Original booking time was 9:15 a.m. the next morning, after the fire." Color drained from the deputy's face. Neal continued laying out papers with methodical precision. "Got a judge's order here citing falsified evidence. Immediate custody transfer to state jurisdiction pending review." He looked up, voice steady. "Unless you want to explain to the FBI how a man was logged into jail before he was arrested?" The deputies exchanged glances. The senior one's hand drifted toward his phone. "I wouldn't," Neal said quietly. "Sheriff Baylor's got enough problems coming. Don't add obstruction charges to your record." Minutes later, Caleb walked out under Neal's escort. In the parking lot, Neal spoke in low tones while unlocking his car. "FBI's got a task force inbound, but they're 8 hours out minimum. Whatever's happening at the quarry, we can't wait for them." Caleb nodded, already plotting. "Maya, meeting us at the church. What's left of it?" Neal pulled onto the street. "She's been busy while you were inside." The church parking lot had transformed into a staging area. 24 vehicles, pickup trucks, SUVs, weathered sedans, idled in formation. Maya stood at the center, passing out handheld radios to grim-faced veterans and church members. Caleb spotted familiar faces. Deacon Elijah's wife directing traffic with fierce efficiency. The Vietnam vet who ran the hardware store checking tire pressure. 3 nurses from Maya's VA shift manning a makeshift first aid station. Maya rushed to embrace him, then was all business. "We've got 47 people, 28 vehicles. Everyone's paired up, no one drives alone." She handed him a radio. "Channel 3 is command, 4 through 6 for tactical." Caleb squeezed her hand, proud and worried at once. "You've been coordinating all this?" People were ready to fight back. They just needed organization. Maya's eyes were steel. "Nadia confirmed they're moving everything to the quarry tonight. If we lose that evidence—" "We won't," Caleb said firmly. He raised his voice to address the gathered crowd. "Listen up! We're not vigilantes. We're citizens protecting our community from criminals hiding behind badges. Stay in visual range of your convoy partners. Radio discipline at all times. If anyone gets separated, fall back to rally point and call it in." Several voices responded in unison. They'd been drilling. Neal pulled Caleb aside. "I'll lead the first group through my usual patrol route. Less chance of getting spotted. You take rear guard?" Caleb nodded, already noting defensive positions. Maya joined them, spreading out a local map marked with highlighter. 3 approaches to the quarry, she pointed. Main road here, service entrance here, logging trail loops behind. The church mothers are watching police bands. Any emergency calls, they'll flood dispatch with false reports on the other side of the county. Vehicle doors slammed as people took their positions. Headlights flicked on one by one, forming a chain of yellow eyes in the darkness. Caleb saw determination in every face. Not just anger, but the quiet resolve of people who'd finally had enough. Maya squeezed his hand one more time before heading to her car. "Ready?" Caleb thought of Brick's smirking face, of Maya tied to that tree, of all the families driven from their homes. "Ready." Neil's cruiser pulled out first, lights off, leading 2 SUVs. The next group followed 30 seconds later. Maya's sedan took position in the middle convoy, bookended by pickup trucks. Caleb brought up the rear in a borrowed Jeep, watching for followers. The long line of vehicles moved like a serpent through back roads and county lanes. Headlights traced the curves ahead, each driver keeping precise distance from the next. Radio clicks marked their progress in code. All clear. Turn ahead. Slow down. Through his windshield, Caleb watched the convoy's taillights stretch into the distance. The quarry waited somewhere in the darkness ahead. His hands were steady on the wheel, combat calm settling over him. One way or another, this ended tonight. The dirt roads kicked up dust that hung in their wake like a shield. Every few minutes, a radio would crackle with position checks, voices clipped and professional. Maya's voice cut through occasionally, directing changes in formation as they navigated tricky turns. The convoy snaked onward through the night, each vehicle a link in a chain of justice, long delayed but finally in motion. The quarry grew closer with each passing mile. Here's the next scene in roughly 1,000 words. The moonlight painted the quarry walls silver, casting long shadows across the excavated stone terraces. Through his binoculars, Caleb watched a line of reapers loading crates into a white box truck. Sheriff Baylor paced nearby, checking his phone repeatedly, while a thin man in an expensive suit, Klein's fixer, directed the operation. "Convoy in position," Maya's voice whispered through the radio. "All units holding." Caleb surveyed the quarry layout. The truck sat on the lowest level, near murky water that collected in the pit. Metal stairs zigzagged up the rock face. Bikers moved between levels, some carrying folders, others lugging hard drives and document boxes. "Target confirmed," Caleb responded. "Phase 1. Go." 2 veterans slipped from their hiding spots, crawling beneath parked motorcycles. They worked silently, cutting brake lines and fuel hoses. Others moved through shadows, disabling bikes one by one. Caleb watched Brick Malloy swagger across the quarry floor, shoving younger reapers who weren't moving fast enough. The gang leader's chain swung from his belt, catching moonlight. "South team ready," came another whisper through the radio. "East in position." "North team set." Caleb keyed his mic. "Execute." Flashlights suddenly blazed from 3 directions, flooding the quarry with harsh light. The reapers froze, momentarily blind. Caleb was already moving. He took the first biker from behind, arms snaking around the man's throat in a precise blood choke. The biker dropped without a sound. 2 more rushed him. Caleb stepped between them, letting their momentum carry them past. His elbow caught one in the temple while his boot swept the other's legs. "FBI! Don't move!" Maya's voice boomed from speakers, magnified to fill the quarry. "This operation is being recorded and live-streamed." A shotgun blast echoed off stone walls. Caleb rolled behind a boulder as pellets sparked against rock. He counted 3 seconds, then exploded forward as the biker reloaded. His hand clamped the shotgun barrel, twisting it away while his knee drove into the man's solar plexus. The weapon clattered free. Through the chaos, he saw Maya standing on the upper level, phone held high. Anya Ruiz's camera light added to the glare as she captured everything. Church mothers and veterans lined the quarry rim, phones recording from every angle. William Turner, Evicted June 12th. Maya's voice rang out. Sarah Washington. Forced out July 3rd. The Martinez family. August 28th. A biker charged Caleb with a knife. He trapped the strike, twisted the arm into a lock, and sent the man splashing into the quarry pool. Another rushed in. Caleb caught him in a heel hook, dropping him hard. Those families lost everything, Maya continued, advancing fearlessly. Their homes stolen through intimidation, while you protected the thieves, Sheriff Baylor. Baylor drew his pistol, but veterans had every angle covered. Phones recorded his every move. Drop it, Wade! Sergeant Neal's voice cut through the night. You're just making it worse. The sound of breaking glass and twisted metal erupted as Brick Malloy smashed car windows in rage. The gang leader spotted Caleb and charged, heavy chain whirling. The chain whistled past Caleb's head. He danced back, letting Brick's momentum carry him forward. The next swing came low. Caleb jumped it, closing distance. Brick swung again, wild now. Caleb caught the chain, ignoring the bite of metal links into his palm. They grappled brutally, neither giving ground. Brick was pure power, muscled bulk slamming forward. But Caleb had fought stronger men in worse places. He rolled with Brick's charge, using the bigger man's momentum. The chain tangled between them. Caleb trapped Brick's arm, weaved the chain through his own grip, and twisted. Brick roared as the links tightened around his own throat and arm. One more turn, and the gang leader crashed to his knees, caught in his own weapon. Baylor saw his enforcers falling. He sprinted for his cruiser, keys fumbling. The engine roared to life, then died with a shriek of metal. Tire spikes glinted in the flashlight beams. This is being broadcast live to 50,000 viewers, Anya announced, camera steady. State Attorney General's office is watching. FBI has it all. Distant sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights began reflecting off the quarry walls. Last chance, Sheriff, Neal called. Surrender with dignity, or get dragged out. Baylor's shoulders slumped. His gun dropped to the ground. Maya's voice carried across the quarry. Robert Lewis, September 4th. Diana Chen, September 21st. We remember every single family you helped destroy. The first FBI vehicles appeared at the quarry entrance, agents deploying with practiced speed. State police cruisers followed, lights painting the scene in rotating colors. Caleb secured the chain-holding Brick, double-checking the restraints. Around him, veterans and church members kept their phones recording as federal agents began collecting evidence. The box truck's contents were already being catalogued. Maya continued reading names, each one an accusation, as agents took Baylor into custody. The sheriff's badge glinted one last time in the flashlight beams before an evidence bag swallowed it. Morning sunlight streamed through the courthouse's high windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. The press gallery overflowed with reporters, their cameras clicking like insects. Maya sat in the front row beside Caleb, her back straight, watching as Sheriff Wade Baylor and Richard Klein were led into the courtroom in orange jumpsuits and chains. Gone was Baylor's folksy swagger. His face had aged years in just days, skin hanging loose around his jaw. Klein's expensive suit had been replaced by prison cotton, his manicured appearance now ragged and gray. All rise, the bailiff called. The federal judge entered, her robes sweeping as she took her place. The indictments filled several pages. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman from the Justice Department, stood. The United States government presents a 96-count indictment against Wade Jefferson Baylor and Richard Allen Klein, she began. Her voice carried clearly through the packed courtroom. Charges include RICO violations, conspiracy, civil rights violations, attempted murder, arson, witness intimidation. Maya squeezed Caleb's hand as the list continued. In the gallery behind them sat dozens of families, the people they'd fought for. Robert Lewis dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief. Diana Chen held her children close, whispering translations. The Martinez family gripped each other's hands, their faces stern. Anya Ruiz scribbled in her notebook, though camera crews captured every moment. Her exposé had broken nationally, sparking investigations in 3 other counties. The story had grown beyond Red Creek, revealing similar schemes across the state. The evidence collected at Red Creek Quarry provides a clear timeline of systematic corruption, the prosecutor continued. Sheriff Baylor's auxiliary program served as a front for organized intimidation. Mr. Klein's shell companies provided funding and direction, targeting specific properties for acquisition through force and fear. Maya watched Baylor's shoulders slump further with each word. His lawyer whispered something, but the former sheriff just stared ahead, empty-eyed. The judge spoke next, her tone sharp as steel. In addition to federal charges, the court notes that the governor has officially dissolved all auxiliary law enforcement programs statewide, effective immediately. All assets seized in this investigation will be directed to a restitution fund for displaced families. In the back, several Reaper lieutenants sat in chains. Brick Malloy's face was a mass of purple bruises, his neck still marked from his own chain. They'd already taken plea deals, turning on their bosses for lighter sentences. The proceedings continued as charges were detailed. Maya listened to the formal language transform their nightmare into legal terms. Criminal enterprise, pattern of racketeering, deprivation of civil rights under color of law. Nadia Klein sat apart from her father, her testimony having helped build the case. She caught Maya's eye and gave a small nod. Her father wouldn't look at her. The defendants systematically targeted minority property owners, the prosecutor explained, displaying a map on the courtroom screen. Red dots marked each incident, forming a pattern of displacement. Using deputized gang members, they created a climate of fear to force sales below market value. Photos appeared next. Maya tied to the tree, the burned church, families standing beside moving trucks. Each image drew quiet murmurs from the gallery. The evidence was overwhelming, the pattern undeniable. The state seeks maximum sentences, the prosecutor concluded. The damage to this community demands nothing less. When Baylor was asked to enter his plea, his voice cracked. "Guilty," he whispered. The word seemed to echo through the courthouse. Klein followed suit, his attorney having negotiated a deal. One by one, the remaining defendants pleaded guilty. No one would risk a trial against such evidence. The judge set sentencing for the following month, but the deals were clear. Decades in federal prison. No early release. No mercy for those who had shown none. As deputies led Baylor away, he passed directly by Maya's seat. The former sheriff tried to summon his old smirk, but his face crumpled instead. All his power, his connections, his careful corruption, gone. Just an old man in chains, shuffling toward justice. Maya stood, holding Caleb's arm, watching their tormentor disappear through the courtroom doors. Around them, families embraced. Some wept. Others stood silent, years of fear finally lifting from their shoulders. Anya approached with her notebook. "Dr. Ellis, any comment on the verdict?" Maya looked at the families, at Caleb, at the sunlight streaming through those high windows. "Justice isn't just about punishment," she said. "It's about restoration. Today, this community starts healing." Outside, cameras flashed as Baylor and Klein were loaded into prison transport vehicles. The morning sun was bright, the air crisp with autumn's approach. Maya watched the cars pull away, carrying with them the last shadows of fear that had darkened Red Creek for so long. Several months had passed since the courtroom victory. Winter's chill had given way to spring warmth, and the sycamore tree stood tall against a perfect blue sky. Around its base, fresh landscaping transformed what had once been a site of terror into a place of peace. New benches circled the tree, and flowering bushes added splashes of color to Freedom Grove Memorial Park. Maya stood before a gathering of nearly 200 people. Children played on fresh grass while their parents sat in folding chairs. Veterans in pressed uniforms stood at attention near the back. Church mothers fanned themselves in the front row, their Sunday best bright in the morning sun. Deacon Elijah, fully recovered from the fire, sat beside Sergeant Neal. They had become friends during the long months of testimony and healing. Anya Ruiz stood off to the side, her camera crew capturing the dedication for the evening news. Caleb worked quietly in the background, helping older folks find comfortable seats, making sure water was available for anyone who needed it. He moved with the same precise efficiency as always, but there was a softness to him now, a gentle pride as he watched his wife approach the podium. Maya wore a simple blue dress, her graying hair caught up in elegant twists. The bruises had long since faded, but she carried herself with new strength, her shoulders straight, her chin high. When she spoke, her voice carried across the grove with quiet authority. "Good morning," she began. "Looking out at all of you today, I see more than faces. I see courage. I see unity. I see the power of people who refused to look away." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Robert Lewis nodded firmly, his granddaughter perched on his knee. The Martinez family, now back in their original home thanks to the restitution fund, held hands in the third row. "This sycamore tree behind me has become a symbol," Maya continued. "The men who tied me here thought they were showing their power. Instead, they revealed their weakness. They thought fear could divide us. Instead, it united us." Several of the church mothers called out, "Amen." Their voices carried like music through the grove. "In the months since that day, we've seen real change," Maya said. "The auxiliary program that sheltered criminals has been disbanded statewide. Corrupt officials face justice. Families have returned home. But more importantly, we've learned to stand together." She gestured to the veterans, to the church groups, to the neighborhood watch members who had trained with Caleb. "We've learned that safety comes from community, not from looking the other way. We've learned that justice requires more than law enforcement. It requires engaged citizens who refuse to be silent." Children played near the tree's base, their laughter a counterpoint to Maya's words. They were too young to fully understand, but they would grow up knowing this story, knowing what their parents and grandparents had accomplished. "The men who attacked me chose this tree because it was hidden," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "They thought nobody would see, nobody would care. But this tree now stands in the open, surrounded by light and life. The rope that bound me has been replaced by bonds of fellowship. The hatred they brought here has been overwhelmed by love." Deacon Elijah led a soft hallelujah that spread through the crowd. Even some of the veterans wiped at their eyes. "This place is now Freedom Grove," Maya continued, "not because we're free from threats or challenges, but because we've learned how to face them together. The tree they tied me to is now the tree that shelters our courage." As she spoke, community members began coming forward with flowers. Diana Chen carried roses. The Martinez children had picked wildflowers. Robert Lewis's granddaughter carefully placed a crown of daisies she had woven herself. The crowd began to sing, an old spiritual that spoke of triumph over hardship. The melody swelled, voices joining in harmony. Maya stepped back from the podium, accepting a gentle hug from Deacon Elijah. Caleb moved forward then, carrying a simple bronze plaque. He worked methodically, securing it to the stone base that had been prepared. His movements were precise but unhurried, each turn of the screws deliberate and final. Maya watched him work, remembering his fury that first day, his controlled violence when necessary, and now his quiet dedication to building something lasting. Around them, the singing continued, children's voices mixing with their elders. When Caleb finished, he stepped back, allowing everyone to see the words now fixed permanently beside the sycamore. Justice is the fruit of courage. The morning sun caught the bronze, making the letters shine. The tree's new leaves cast dappled shadows across the gathering, so different from the darkness of that first day. Where fear had been planted, something stronger had grown. Near the back, Anya quietly filmed as veterans stood at parade rest, as church mothers embraced their neighbors, as children played without fear in the shadow of a tree that had been transformed from a symbol of hatred to a monument of hope. The afternoon sun slanted through the trees, painting Freedom Grove in warm golden light. Maya and Caleb walked hand in hand along the winding path that circled the memorial. Their footsteps crunched softly on the fresh gravel as children's laughter echoed from the nearby playground. "Your morning class is getting bigger," Maya said, squeezing Caleb's hand. "Mrs. Johnson told me she's never felt stronger." Caleb nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. 82 years old and she's mastering wrist releases. Never too late to learn. They passed a group of teenagers practicing basic self-defense moves on the grassy area near the parking lot. The kids waved, and Caleb raised his free hand in acknowledgement. 3 times a week, he taught free classes here. Morning sessions for seniors, afternoon training for teens, and evening workshops for anyone who wanted to learn. "Remember when Tommy first came?" Maya asked, nodding toward a lanky 15-year-old, demonstrating a proper stance to his younger sister. "Could barely look anyone in the eye." "Now he's teaching others," Caleb said. His voice carried the quiet pride of a mentor. "That's how we build strength. Pass it on." They reached the central plaza where the sycamore stood. New benches formed a circle around its base, and Maya settled onto one, patting the space beside her. Caleb sat, his movements still carrying that fluid grace that spoke of decades of training. "Had a new nurse at the VA today?" Maya said, watching leaves dance in the breeze. "Fresh out of school, scared of everything." "Reminded me of myself, way back when." "What did you tell her?" "That fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control you." Maya leaned against his shoulder, showed her how to ground herself, how to maintain calm when everything's chaos. Same lessons we learned here, just in a different setting. A group of elderly residents power-walked past, led by Mrs. Johnson herself. The woman's silver hair gleamed as she demonstrated the proper way to swing arms while walking. "Looking good, ladies," Maya called. They waved back, their faces bright with exercise and purpose. "The seniors' self-defense class was Robert Lewis's idea," Caleb said, watching them. "Said if he'd known basic moves years ago, maybe things would have been different for his neighborhood. And now his granddaughter's in the youth program," Maya added. "Breaking the cycle of fear." They sat quietly for a moment, watching the late afternoon light filter through the leaves. The sycamore's shadow stretched long across the plaza, but it was a protective presence now, not a threat. Birds had built nests in its higher branches, and squirrels chased each other around its trunk. "Got a call from Anya yesterday," Maya said. "The program's being adopted in 3 other counties." "They want us to consult," Caleb nodded thoughtfully. "Might be good to share what worked here. The mix of training and community support. Can't have one without the other." A teenage girl approached them hesitantly, holding a permission slip. "Mr. Ellis, my mom said I could join the afternoon class." Caleb took the paper, reviewing it with careful attention. "Welcome aboard, Sarah. We start with awareness basics tomorrow at 4. The girl beamed and hurried back to her waiting friends. Maya watched her go, remembering other young faces transformed by confidence and skill. "Sometimes I think about that day," Maya said softly, "how they never imagined their cruelty would lead to this. A whole community learning to protect each other." "That's always been the difference," Caleb replied. "They thought strength meant causing fear. We knew it meant ending it." More teens gathered for the afternoon session, laying out practice mats under the sycamore's spreading branches. Caleb would need to join them soon, but for now, he sat with Maya, their fingers intertwined, watching the life they'd helped create unfold around them. Senior citizens chatted on benches, sharing water bottles and stories. Parents pushed strollers along smooth paths, nodding to neighbors without hesitation or fear. Young people moved with new confidence, aware, but not afraid. "Time for class," Caleb said finally, standing and offering Maya his hand. She rose, straightening her nurse's uniform. Her shift at the VA would start soon, where she'd continue mentoring that nervous new nurse, showing her how to find strength in service to others. "See you at dinner," she said, kissing his cheek. "Mrs. Martinez is bringing over her tamales." "Wouldn't miss it," Caleb replied. He headed toward his waiting students as Maya walked toward her car. The late afternoon sun caught the sycamore's leaves, turning them to stained glass. Birds called from the branches, their songs mixing with children's laughter and the steady count of students practicing their moves. The tree stood tall against the golden sky, its trunk solid, its roots deep. Where darkness had once gathered, light now danced. Where fear had ruled, peace grew stronger every day. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.